Hello, and welcome to our weekly LinkedIn Live leadership series, Voices of Leadership. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathy Eastwood, your host and founder and CEO of E=Y. Each week, we explore the fascinating world of leadership, featuring voices from various generations, industries, functions, and backgrounds. A team's job is to deliver business results. The role of a leader is to empower, inspire, and enable the people to deliver results. There's a repeatable formula to this success. It's the E3 Leadership Code: express, engage, plus execute, powered by emotions. However, each leader's approach to applying the E3 Leadership Code is unique because there's no one way to lead. And so our live sessions aim to showcase these diverse voices of leadership. And as we meet each leader, we uncover what drives them, explore their unique leadership styles, and how they show up to deliver results. So today, let's make this as interactive as possible. So in the chat, please feel free to share your name, where you're dialing in from. And the question of the day will be, do you enjoy good wine? And if so, what's your favorite wine? And please feel free to ask questions as we go through. So I'm thrilled to welcome Joanna Dumont to our show this week. Joanna is not only a dear friend, but also a visionary leader in the realm of global insights. Her career has spanned significant roles such as Colgate-Palmolive and Dumont, and she currently serves as the vice president at Platis. And if you don't know the name of the company, you will most definitely recognize some of the brands such as Godiva and Cars. Joanna is also a board member of Insight's Lighthouse and has shared her expertise on prominent stages such as Davos 2024, advocating for the integration of deep consumer insights with strong leader to drive business growth. Having worked across the globe from Australia to the US and Switzerland to Thailand, Joanna now lives in France, potentially amidst probably right now, you're probably in the wine country as we speak, and she's preparing to relocate to England. She's known for her people-centric approach, whether it's leading teams, managing brands, or driving consumer insights. Her strategies are deeply rooted in understanding and empowering people. Jo, it is so great to have you here. We've been talking about doing this for some time, but I think you are actually in wine country right now. Is that right?
I really am. Yes, I'm
Oh.
sitting in the south of France, in deep in the heart of rosé country, and almost near Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Which, if you want to ask what's my favorite wine, it's definitely Châteauneuf-du-Pape. But we can talk about that a bit later. But yes, deep in the heart of wine country, where I love to be.
Excellent. And I can't wait to come visit because I love my wine as well. So, Jo, obviously I did a bit of an intro, but can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Yes, it's probably my least favorite subject is talking about myself. And then as I say that, I'm probably going to go on for too long. So stop me when you've had enough. But look, I'm from New Zealand originally. I'm from, the smallest part of the world with, very few people, and always looking outside of my country as to where I wanted to live for the rest of my life. And I was very lucky to find my career in marketing, and specifically in consumer insights, because that was sort of the thing that I discovered I loved the most. And I didn't know why. It's not like somebody sat me down in college and said, this is the career for you. It's like I found it found me, and this is kind of what has taken me around the world and dragged my husband and my family along with me all around the world. So yes, it's been an exciting journey, and it's been a great experience. I think for me, what's driven my career is probably a bit of luck. But I'm guessing that luck is never really something. There's no real such thing as luck. It's just things happen because they're meant to be, and because you sort of somehow deserve it. But I joined a fabulous company, Colgate-Palmolive, and because of the global nature of the company, they were able to offer me opportunities all around the world, places that I never really imagined I would live. So as you said, I lived in the US, I lived in New York for now 11 years on and off, and then Thailand, and then Geneva, and then France, and now France again, and US twice. So we've lived everywhere and traveled as many places. And for me, the discovery part has always been probably the most enriching of all of the roles that I've ever had. Is as an insights person, and I see some insights, some familiar names coming up on the chat. As an insights person, we are always about learning, and for me, learning is about culture. It's about experiencing the world. It's about travel. Those are the things that I love to do, but it's also what enriches my life, because it's not just an experience, but it helps you to, be a better person and to learn more. So insights, my roles within the different companies that I've worked have allowed me to, exploit my passion and to do the things that I love to do. And in doing that, I've had a very exciting career. So, all of the things that insights people do around the world is, we love to share our knowledge, and we love to feel like we're helping people and solving particular problems. That's what we do best.
So let me stop you for 1 second, because a lot of the folks on this call may or may not be even familiar with what that role is. If you're in the services business, or, if you've been in HR and you've not been necessarily around products, this could be a new role. Can you tell our audience a little bit more about the role?
Sure. It's actually it's an interesting role that doesn't exist perhaps in every company, but it's probably been most enriched in sort of FMCG type organizations, where the sort of the focus that these organizations have had on the consumer is, obviously that's where it all starts from, right? You're selling packaged goods, you're selling things to people every day. So the role of the consumer insight person or the insight team is really to help them discover what they don't know about their customer, help them understand where the opportunities lie, and also where where they've come from and the things that we need to fix. But probably the best way to describe it, or the easiest way to describe it, is to talk about the things that which is, yes, FMCG means fast moving consumer goods. The kinds of products that you buy each and every day, for whether it's your toothpaste or your deodorant, these are the things that, or your biscuits, as I'm now very familiar with. These are things that we buy every day. We don't spend a lot of money on them, and yet they're incredibly important to our everyday lives. Without them, things would be pretty miserable. So the role of insights is to, really enable the company to find opportunities to grow, to point out the things that, maybe they're not doing so well. We're often what I would call the bearers of maybe not necessarily the best news. We're often the ones who are pointing out the flaws. We can't take, we maybe we need to make sure that we have wonderful products. If we don't have wonderful products, we need to rethink that. That's not always, a message that companies want to hear, because that costs more money, for example. Right. So, so our role is about understanding the past, understanding where we are today, and then anticipating the future and finding growth opportunities. So in a nutshell, that's what the Insights team does.
Excellent. And I love, because you and I have had conversations before, because it really is people centric, right? And
right.
And people are probably saying, well, how are these two things coming together from a leadership and consumer and customer insights? But there is a lot of synergy, right? Like when you are leading your consumers to make sure you understand how to influence them, right? Where do they show up? How do they want to be treated? How do they want do you go as far as even like how they want things packaged and priced and things like
Absolutely.
that?
Everything from the formula of the product to the communication that we put out there, and everything in between, the packaging, the price, the promotion strategy, all the elements that go into an innovation or any product relaunch are under our part of our responsibility, working with our marketing marketing and business partners.
Yeah. And so it's funny. So Ralph here is kind of leading me to the next question, which is around leadership, right? Like, so you have a sense of curiosity and your puzzle solving, which are key to your role. Do you find those apply to your leading your teams and leading, the company through change?
Yes, I think I of course those skills apply, and I think probably most of us are doing this somewhat without really understanding what we're doing, that we're actually using the skills that we have from an insight standpoint to influence and empower, and grow their team. So in the insights world, it's about a deep understanding of people that helps you grow or helps unlock an opportunity. So that's a very broad definition of what insights is, but actually it's a definition of what leadership is, because leadership is all about growing and developing and making a change, making things better. And in order to do that, we have to understand what are the levers that we need to pull, or what are the challenges that we're trying to unlock. We use a technique a lot, where we call the 5 whys. And I think lots of people use 5 whys for lots of different things. And it's, really just about getting to the root cause of something, or the root reason for something. So that applies to products. It also applies to people. When you're trying to understand, why is my team not gelling? There's a whole series of questions that you can kind of get to uncover what's the root cause. And then once you understand the root cause, then you can start to very quickly move to the right action that's going to get you where you need to be. And so in my experience, those kinds of techniques are very relevant from a leadership perspective. And in fact, over the years, when we connect with different functions across the organization, they're absolutely fascinated by what we do. And most of them would say, oh, I can see a connection between, what you're talking about and what we're trying to do. I even had at one point in my life, in my career, a series of HR people who came to me and said, I love this concept, this idea of concept development. Help me develop some concepts for HR that we can talk about, different programs that we can build for the company. And, so it's fascinating, because once we started talking about, well, what's the real benefit we're talking about here? Why is this interesting? What's the insight that is going to drive that? All of a sudden, the programs and the things that we were doing were a lot more targeted and a lot more meaningful to the people in the organization than perhaps, the way that they might have been structured in the past. So some of this thinking, some of this idea of people centricity is so relevant, for every part of the organization. Understanding who your customer is, and therefore finding those right pain points and levers that you can pull and push in order to get to the place that you want to go to.
Yeah, and one of the things, there's the saying out there that treat everyone the way you want to be treated. I've actually pushed back on that one and said, no, you actually need to treat people the way they want to be treated, right? Because you could have the best ideas, and if you keep saying it the way you think about it, or the way you've experienced it, you're not necessarily going to get the results you want.
Yeah, totally agree with that, right? It's like if we design a product that we love and no consumer cares about it, it ain't going to sell, right? So it's not going to deliver the results that we want. So we have to be people-centric. The biggest mistake that most companies, most big, consumer goods companies make is they launch products that nobody wants, which sounds so obvious, but it's actually a really, really hard thing to anticipate.
Yeah, I agree. I talk to a lot of leaders and they're like, well, we have this brilliant solution. And I'm like, yeah, great. But if no one want, if it doesn't relate to what their problem is, what they need, what they want, where it is when they need it, they're just gonna be challenged. You're pushing up a rock up a hill, right? The whole idea is to get this that it starts to drag the solution for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes to like change management is, I think, still something that most of us struggle with. But change management is all, when you look at the principles of it, it's all about finding the path that makes sense and then continuing to reinforce it. That's what we do in marketing, right? We find an opportunity and then we continue to communicate it because people have short memories. It doesn't stick unless they're constantly reminded. So the principles of marketing and the principles of HR and leadership even is still it's the same. I think the one thing, and the one other parallel that I would draw with kind of marketing is, I think consistency is so important. We talk a lot about when you're building a brand, brands take decades, sometimes centuries to build. But the way that they're most effectively built is when they're built in a very consistent way. And that we're very clear on how we show up, and we're very clear on what we say. It doesn't mean we don't innovate, but there's a feel to what to the brands, those that are successful. And I think the same thing is true of people. And I think consistency in how you show up is so important, that people have to be true to themselves, but also in a way predictable for the people around them, because that helps them. I mean, that's what I try and do as an insights person. I'm always trying to figure out, who are you and how can I work with you? And this is, my understanding of that person is very important for me to then understand how I can use what skills I have to influence them the best, or to help them as they need to be helped.
Yep. Agreed. And it ties back, a lot to the E3 leadership code, but like really being able to express the vision, right? So if you can have this brilliant vision and you go out there, we all know the leaders, right? That they're like, rah, rah, here, follow me. But then it doesn't go anywhere, right? So the next thing is you got to make sure everyone's on board. Why are they there? Why do they care? And then the execution, because if you don't execute, these great ideas just fall flat. So it is the same thing. And I love you bring up consistency. And I probably haven't thought about it enough in the way that you just explained it. And it is absolutely what I think about a lot, because, I'll talk to teams that I'm working with and I'm like, you got to keep coming back to the basics.
Yeah.
If you have a vision and you say, we're going to do this, and then you don't talk about it again for 6 months, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I think it's so easy, again, to parallel the marketing world. We get sick of the things that we say as brands much quicker than consumers get sick of hearing them.
Oh,
And I
wow.
think that parallel to leadership is the same. The more consistent that we can be, actually, it's more comforting for people. They understand where they say they, if they like it, they stay. If they don't, they leave. But that's okay, because there's consistency there. It's a fit, there's culture, etc. So the kind of idea of staying on track, without feeling like it's boring people, is actually so important. And I think the older that I've gotten and the more that I've worked in different companies, I've realized that the ones who hammer the same message over and over, the strategy becomes clearer and your role within that becomes clearer, and you can perform actually much better. We always talk about, in marketing, you always talk about the freedom of a tight brief, right? Which, so if you go to your agency and you say, this is what I want from my brand, and I want it to look exactly like this, and you would say that's actually that could be construed as restricting innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the opposite is true. The best innovation comes from a really super tight brief. Like, if you look at some of the best campaigns in the world, they were briefed on a very niche idea. If you look at Dove, for example, which is probably the most well-known campaign of really saying that, that beauty can be anything, right? Real beauty is the thing. That's a very narrow brief in a world of personal care that has so many elements to it. But you come in with that, and all of a sudden you've got years and years of campaign material that builds a brand from going from strength to strength. And I think the same is true for companies, right? If you look at Apple or, big companies that are built from heritage, they're built from a very simple message that they stay true to over time. And so I think for individuals, it's also important that we follow those same principles, that we know who we are, we know what we stand for, we're consistent about that, and we keep, reinforcing that message over time.
Yeah. Well, you're helping me on some of the beliefs that we have here. But the E3 leadership profile is something that we preach to everyone, to really have that understanding of who you are. And we'll do it as an individual, right? Knowing yourself, what are your values, what's your non-negotiables, what's your goals, and then your team. And in a perfect world, as you know, with that super tight brief from the top, if you can get that from the top down and the individuals from the bottom up, you then have synergy right across an organization, delivering on the results that you're aiming for as an organization.
Yeah,
So
super cool.
yeah, I love it. You're starting to see a whole bunch of names pop up, aren't you? And you're excited
I
to see
am.
them. I love it. You're going to have a lot of visitors soon, I think. So Ralph's got another question for us. So in a world that's becoming AI dependent for analysis of almost everything, and your profession seems closely dependent on analytics, do you find a fear of job loss seeping into your teams, and how do you lead in a fear-driven situation?
It's a great question, Ralph. Very insightful into this crazy world, and I actually not scared, because the kind of work that used to be that we would talk about, the analytics part of it, is the low value work in our business. What's the real value is the ability to take that information and connect it to the problems that we have, and also connecting the dots across multiple different data sources. That's actually the value. And no computer yet, or no AI system yet that I know of, is going to be, possibly able to do that. So I actually think, and a few people on the call who I know I've discussed this with before, that the role that we play has to change, in the sense that we have to elevate our thinking. If we're only relying on delivering research results to the team, that can be done by AI, and probably can be done by Copilot faster and cheaper than I will ever be able to. But what they can't do is connect that to the needs of the business, and that's where we all stand. And so for me, it's about training my teams and working with the people in the organization to enrich the roles that we play, make sure that we are playing an irreplaceable role in the organization, and showing our leadership standing out, having a real touch with our consumer, and bringing them into the organization, which no computer is going to be able to do.
Yeah, and I think that's, across the board, it brings productivity to the table, right? Which is fantastic. That yeah, all the things that we don't like to do can probably be more automated, because they're not really the strategy, the thinking, the human touch of it. And we should be looking at how to use it to free up that time to then be able to add even more value.
Absolutely. Someone came to me the other day and said, "Oh, what are the top trends in environmental, beliefs with consumers?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm sure we've got a report on that somewhere." And I thought, I'll just ask Copilot. In 5 seconds, I had 5 things, and I said, "Look, these are not perfect, but this is a pretty good start."
Yeah.
And that's really what we're asking for. And then we need to go deeper and find the best way of leveraging that.
Yeah, but it didn't take you then, you didn't go off on a tangent doing something else, and that kept you from staying
Yeah.
focused on the most important things of where you need to be at the moment.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I think It's a powerful tool, but I think, as you said, we have to help people understand what that looks like, right? And I think there is a lot of fear.
Mm.
And, as leaders, our greatest job is to help people understand what they're, here's the consumer insights coming back in, right? Understand what is keeping them from getting on board and help them see the advantages.
Yeah, and I think what we know that there's a lot of fear out there right now. This is I'm being shocked about. We were talking about this the other day, that Gen Z are talking about one of the things that they really want is a job for life. And it's interesting because what it is that we may evolve, but it's a reaction to the fear that they're experiencing about an unstable world that's around us. So the other element to the different generations that we're working hand in hand with is that they come from and have been influenced by very different events in their lives, which is shaping the way they approach work and how they approach life, actually. So these are things that we have to take into consideration as a leader. It's a as a leader, it's very multidimensional, the way we have to think about who our stakeholders are, and putting them all into one box or treating them as all exactly the same is also not going to work.
Yeah. And it's interesting, just as you said, that they're looking for the job for life, whereas we're more of the generation, right? Our parents had that, right, for a while, and then we were like, oh no, we need to keep moving to be ahead of the curve. So it's just interesting how the generations kind of flop back and forth.
Yeah,
So
they do. And I can talk about that at another time. But yes, we do find that generations, like, stuff goes from one generation and skips a generation and comes
yeah,
back again. So it's
yeah,
super interesting.
very cool. So tell me, with the audience here, how would you describe your leadership style? So how do you show up? You're obviously people centric. Any other tips and tricks for leaders on the call of how to show up and really lead teams?
So I can't be anything but myself. I mean, you know me, but I'm a natural person. So I'm me in whatever situation I am. So that, I think, is being authentic about who you are is very important. I think I'm also a very stable and calm person. So one of the things that my team will always tell me is that, you never get flustered. And even in difficult situations, I never get flustered. So for me, stability and calmness and authenticity is really what drives, what sort of defines my leadership style, but also the ability to sort of communicate well. Because if you can't communicate well, if you can't get your ideas across to people, you'll lose them. So we have to be able to, take people along with us, inspire them, bring them together, in an authentic way that makes sense for them. So that is how I would kind of define my leadership style. But yeah, it's just I'm me. I am who I am. You cannot change that.
And that's so important. You and I have talked about this. To me, that is the most important thing for leaders, is to show up as yourself, right? I
Yeah,
have a lot of people that think, oh, you have to be Don Draper to be good as a leader, right? The
yeah.
marketing whiz, good looking white male. But no, it's really about finding yourself. There's a lot of introverted leaders that are great, right? And you
Mm.
don't have to fit a mold. There is no mold.
There is no mold. I mean, I think if you want to be influential, you need to be credible. And that's, that's something I learned very early on in my career, was that, having the role that I have, you have to always, be able to present yourself in a way that people believe you. So you've got to, build the trust. But it's also very important. I had a boss at the very beginning of my career, and he said, it's okay to have a point of view. You just have to say it's your point of view. And I take this with me everywhere, because I think that is so important, that, we don't express a point of view as if it's a fact. But having a point of view is worth, a gazillion data points sometimes. So,
Yeah. Like
so
a
don't be
thesis,
afraid
right?
of having a point of view.
Yeah, it's like a thesis to prove it right? This is, based on what I believe and see and know. This is what I'm putting forth. I agree. So Charlie has a question for you. Given the great brands within Platis, how do you ensure that customer insights are effectively translated into actionable strategies across multiple functions globally?
Charlie, it's a great question, and we could probably have an entire discussion about just that question. I think a simple way for me to translate that is I think we need to simplify and we need to consistently communicate. That's how we get things, boil things down to something that people can really action. It has to be simple, it has to be consistent, and that the best consumer insights honestly are falling into that camp. If it takes more than a couple of sentences to describe it, it's probably not going to be actionable. So that is one thing, and I think most global organizations are still struggling with that, because despite the realities of us being so much more global than ever before, we see a lot of bubbling up of local culture becoming so much more important than ever before. And so actually sharing global insights and translating things globally is more of a challenge. But when you boil it down to what's human nature, what are the simple things that we can act upon, that gets a lot easier. And we've done a lot of work in Platis on things like demand spaces. So understanding, the key areas, the key moments of the day where people are snacking is actually really important for us to be then able to consistently communicate that across the business, makes it so much more powerful for everyone to act on.
There is so much good insights just in that last piece, and I think that's probably the perfect way to sum up everything that you've shared, Joanna, because a lot of folks on the call are also from the software world, and I think sometimes we forget to think from the consumer point of view. And it's just as important to make sure we're always thinking about our users and our customers and what's going on to really
Oh,
be.
totally. And for all you software people, seriously, I've seen so many fabulous ideas that need just a little bit of kind of massaging and tweaking in order to fit better into the needs of the users. And this is, I was talking to someone just yesterday about a similar project. Everyone's got, I've got this great idea. I'm like, yes, but who's your user and why are we doing this?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Joanna, thank you so much for joining. I mean, the things that I took away and the similarities between marketing as a function and leadership just in general, of making sure that you really have expressed what is that brief? What's that super tight brief, and make it as clear as possible. And then it's about consistency and really digging in, asking the 5 whys, and showing up as yourself. Those were some of the big takeaways that I got from today. But I really wanted to thank you for joining us and taking some time out of, I'm sure you're ready to go open up a bottle of wine right now. And
for sure, a nice Shadow Nerf pup.
excellent. Sounds good. So if you want to learn any more about E3, we're having actually a E3 Leaders Lunch and Learn that talks about how to influence change, and taking some of these ideas that Joanna had talked about. We're actually going to talk about what are people's barriers, what are their motivators, why do they show up, and how, and it's an opportunity. So next Tuesday at noon, you can join us, and it's an opportunity to practice some of these things and network with other people. So it'll be more of a live session, and we hope that you can join us. So thanks so much, Joanna, and thank you to the audience for joining us, and we'll see you all soon. Take
Thank
care.
you.